Assalamu alaikum, friends. Today is, as usual, Muslims Together program, and this program comes to you every Sunday, except the second Sunday, where we talk about pluralism in politics. Today, you will be surprising to hear a few facts about Islam in America. When did Islam began in America? How many Muslims were there? How long ago they have been there? To talk about all of this, we have with us Dr. Samira Saïdi. You will be surprised to know that, well, I'll let her speak the program, but let me introduce her. Dr. Samira Benturki Saïdi is an Algerian filmmaker, camerawoman, illustrator, independent research historian, author, and publisher. Working in the field of publishing and audiovisual production, she is the author and illustrator of historical works edited by publishing houses in Europe and Middle East. She specializes in the field of research on maritime exchanges, that is, across the oceans between ancient peoples, and in particular Arab, Muslim, and Black African navigators and explorers. For several decades, she has specialized in the pre-Columbian history of America, highlighting highlighting the contribution of Arab navigators and explorers before the advent of Islam to its discovery and settlement, as well as the continuity of its settlement by expeditions launched from West and North Africa at the advent of Islam. A series of documentaries and TV programs entitled Echoes of History are being produced in order to transmit this maritime patrimony. Her most recent works published are many, and she will be sharing that. Dr. Samira Saidi, please share. The floor is yours.
So, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much, Dr. Mike, for inviting me to speak about this Arab and Muslim presence in America before 1492. So, would you like me to answer questions or just tell about my work?
Yes, tell about your work, and then we will ask questions. We will ask the questions.
Well, as I was highlighting it a few minutes ago, I read several times the Quran, and I understood that we are required to appeal to our active intellectual and critic mind in order to understand what is meant by the verses, by the Quranic verses. And we are supposed to, well, the Quran is supposed to be meant for people of understanding, of intelligence, of wisdom. And so we are required to put into question everything, whether in the scientific fields or in history or archaeology, as there are many verses who refer to archaeology in the Quran. And so as I read it several times, I noticed that it had been sent, that Muhammad والسلام, as a prophet had been sent as a mercy to the worlds. And when it is underlined to the worlds, it means that to al-jinn and al-ins, so the visible and the invisible worlds. So my question, how come the natives of America had been forgotten? Because if we refer to the official version of history, then America had been isolated from the rest of the world for at least 15 centuries, considering that
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed, Dr. Samira, I had the very same question. Neither Bible, nor Torah, nor Hindu, Bhagavad Gita, or Quran mention this. How come they missed this out? And that has been on my mind. I'm so glad that you have done research on this. Please continue.
And thank you. And so I have started making researches, and there was nothing found that was very easy for the general public to find. So I have started making further researches and going to libraries and trying to find the track of prophets on the American continent. And because for me there were obviously missing parts. Should we rely on the word of God, of Allah, then the natives of America had to be part of the peoples whom it had been sent to. And so the first thing that I noticed was the presence of the Arabic language. And it was quite a shock. Thus, I went back to the whole history of Christopher Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that the academic publications did not correspond to what was published in schools, in manuals of history, and in books that were meant for students in universities.
Indeed.
It was completely different.
Yes.
And moreover, the history of science developed by the Arabs and the Muslims did not correspond to the version making of the Europeans, the great inventors and the great discoverers and explorers. So this was illogical, considering that the Europeans were at that time believing that Earth was flat, and if they navigated into the ocean, they would fall in the void, in the abyss. So
Yeah.
how come they suddenly decided to look for a so-called route towards the west? This was really illogical. And moreover, the Europeans were the heirs of the Greeks, and the Greeks considered that the Atlantic Ocean was for the dead. It was the territory of the dead, so it was. I mean, they told their peoples not to navigate on this ocean, not to go too far. And for me, it was also strange that it was in 1492 that suddenly there was the discovery of America, because it was linked to the fall of Granada. I mean, there were really too many points that were illogical, and I have decided to make my own researches, because ever since my youngest age, I put into question everything I was told. So it was nothing new. There was nothing new under the sun for me. And well, it happened that also the history and maritime history of the Black Africans had been completely erased. And I mean, when Europe was in the darkness, there were universities in Africa, and there were libraries, a compound of hundreds of thousands, not to say millions of books. So there was a continent full of scholars, and which had so many universities, and so many scholars and students come in from different directions in order to learn, to get their learning in Africa, in Black Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly the Europeans, who had not that many libraries at that time, because according to a German scholar called Sigrid Hunker, the Europeans had only 3 universities at that time, 3 or 4 universities, compound of 400 or 500 books. So how come suddenly those who were in their darkness discovered America, and those who were, under the light of Islam, and were unable to find this so-called new continent?
Yes, and there was a civilization that thrived here, equal, I guess, from the same time as civilization in Asia, Europe, and Africa. There was simultaneous growth, but we never knew about it. And as you said, Columbus gets the credit, but now there is a lot of research being done. I'm glad you did your research, not only to discover that Native Americans were here, but Islam was also here from 8th century.
Yes, you know that in fact Christopher Columbus, in order to reach the Muslim America, let's talk about Christopher Columbus. He used to live in southern Spain, in Palos de la Frontera. in a Franciscan monk monastery. In this monastery, 150 years before Columbus, a monk visited the Caribbeans with the Arabs from North Africa, from Al-Maghreb al-Arabi. And when he returned to his monastery in Palos de la Frontera, he wrote a book entitled El Libro del Descubrimiento, the Book of Discovery, in which he names the different islands that he visited with the Arabs and Muslims of North Africa. At that time, I mean, in the 11th and 12th century, there were the Al-Murabitun. It was the Maghribi dynasty who called Al-Murabitun, come from the, which was founded by the Tuareg, and the Tuareg who were from Southern Arabia, from the Arabian Peninsula. And so they had a certain knowledge in the maritime field and in other fields, of course. And there are so many information that are from China, that are from Al-Maghreb al-Arabi, from Spain, and from the America, that I have been able to cross in order to understand why, at first, Islam was in America since the 7th and 8th century, and then why there was so many information, archaeological information and linguistic information and anthropological ones also related to this period of time, underlining that the Arabs from Al-Maghreb as well as other also territories, but maybe we will not have enough time to talk about it, were present on the American continent. So
what are the signs that you found that Islam was here?
First, there is the oral traditions of the Native Americans, which always underline the fact that people came from sunrise over the water, or over a fleet from the east, or and many expressions and statements emphasizing the fact that they came from the east and not from the north or from the Bering Strait, as they want to do to everyone to believe it for ideological reasons, of course. And unfortunately, there were too many oral traditions that had been overlooked, ignored, and deliberately omitted.
Yes. Somehow, to add to that, somehow, even in the Quran and the other books, they talk about only the people of the books, but there were several oral traditions simultaneously that have been never been mentioned. And most of the Native Americans are Aborigines in Australia. They're all oral traditions. They didn't write, most of them.
Yeah. And, you know, there are many discoveries that challenge a large number of certainties about the peoples of America. Like, for example, the Arabic coins that were found off the coast of Venezuela or Honduras, or also on the eastern side of the United States, near to Cambridge. There were also peoples dressed like the Arab way in several regions of America, like I told you last time, in Guatemala, but also in other parts of Southern America, and also in the United States, for example, in Taos, in the regions peopled by the Pueblos.
Pueblos, okay, yeah.
Yes, and they were, if you take a look at a postcard dating back to the beginning of the 20th century, you discover that they are dressed exactly like in North Africa, like in Algeria, for example, or Morocco, Tunisia. Moreover, in the if you go to the Gallery of Four in Washington D.C., you discover that they were dressed with jalaba. I mean, it's a dress it's a clothes that comes from North Africa, and especially from Al-Maghreb al-Arabi. And not only there was not only about the clothes or coins or things like that. They I mean, most people believe that the Native Americans did not know anything about writing. And it happened that it was, as regarding the will, completely untrue, because after the discovery of archaeological sites in California and Nevada by American academics, and this was during the 60s and the 70s, where when they found out the name of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam written in Kufic Arabic. There was controversies regarding the writing being Kufic or not, but it was Arabic. So Muhammad Nabiullah, written in the western states of the United States, was quite interesting. Not to say shocking, and
yes, it is.
Yeah.
Friends, you're listening to the program Muslims Together. Today we have Dr. Samira Benturki Saïdi speaking about Muslim presence in America and the history of Native Americans with Islam. Please, Dr. Samira, go ahead.
Thank you. And so after these different discoveries by, for example, Dr. Beifeld from Harvard University, and other universities, other academics from the University of California. There were also other discoveries during the 80s, as there was a library compound of 50 tablets written in classic Arabic and dating back to the 11th and 12th century, at the same time as the Murabitun dynasty once again. And it was located on the Anasazi site. I mean, it was an Indian site from Anasazi in the western states of the United States of America.
How do you pronounce it? Anasazi?
Well, in French we say Anasazi. In English, it's Anasazi.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds like an Arabic name.
Well, there seems to be quite Anasazi. I don't know if it's Arabic or not, but there is Arabic tablets were found on their sites. And
was that in a rock format, or is it in a leather? How was it, the tablets?
It was on clay.
Clay.
It was clay tablets.
Yeah.
And when these different discoveries had been made, for example, in the 70s, in the 60s or the 70s, some journalists said that Beifeld and other academics wanted to please the Arabs or the Muslims, and I mean, it was it was unfair.
Yeah.
Because it was archaeological sites, and they wanted to pretend, to deny the existence of the Arabic language on the American continent.
Mm-hmm.
And a few weeks ago, I discovered that there were many other discoveries aside from the ones I had focused during these years. One from an American linguist who worked for 40 years on the languages of America, and he understood Semitic languages as well as different Native American dialects, and in the English language, of course. And he discovered that there was a great part of the United States and Mesoamerica, which languages were made of the Arabic languages, of Semitic languages, and especially the Arabic language.
That is very interesting.
And this is something that is not, yes, and it's not really new, because personally, I had taken courses at the university in order to learn the Mayan language. And during the
You speak Mayan language?
Well, I started to learn it, and then I had so many things to do, I had to put it aside. You know, I'm on different fronts trying to highlight this Arab and Muslim presence. So I had to select what was a priority for me. And for peoples, I wanted to hear about this Arab and Muslim presence in America.
I was in Yucatan Peninsula. I met all the chief, the native Mayan chiefs there, and of course, we went to inaugurate a medicine garden there for them to have medicine for the shamans, because for about 200 square miles in that Yucatan Peninsula, there was no medical facility. And the only way the Native Americans did was the shamans, and they were running out of the herbs. So one of my organizations bought a land, about 2 acres, and we gave them all the plants to grow. And but I didn't learn the language there. But it was
But you know,
nice to be with them.
yeah, sure. I was also in Mexico a few weeks ago, and I met with Mayan people who were so interested in my researches and told me that they were not allowed, in fact, to have access to their history. And now I understand why it's
Yes,
such a big problem for governments to let their peoples have access to their historical heritage.
indeed, indeed. And the other thing was the chief told us that they were not allowed to go worship at the Chichen Itza temple, which is the pyramid. And I took the bold step. I gathered up with the chief plus all of them, said, let's go pray. And the police tried to stop us. And I said, I challenged them. This is something we have to do. And they just kept looking at it. We went up on the top of the mountain, and they were all crying, the Native American chiefs, the Mayan chiefs, because they were not allowed to worship in their own temple for a long time. And that was the first time, I believe, after 30 years, they were able to worship, and I felt good about it.
And that's great news because it is. I mean, if we speak of democracy all the time, of freedom, of
Yes.
religion, and well, it has also to concern the Native Americans because they have been deprived of their rights, and they have been even deprived of their rights to worship Allah
Hmm.
as, I mean, their God, as Allah, as being Allah.
Hmm.
As, for example, in the case of the Cherokee Nation, which has been highlighted by Dr. Crane, who wrote an extraordinary article in 2004, highlighting the fact that they were Muslims, that they started their prayers with Ya Allah, and that they used to fast during Ramadan, and that after having been uh, um, sent to Oklahoma against their will,
Hmm.
a part of the Cherokees ran to the north,
The
and
reservations, yeah.
they escaped and ran to the north because they knew that they were going to die and that they were planning to put them to death.
Yes.
They recreated a place where they were, in fact, uh, recreating a tawaf as in Mecca. It was like Mecca, but in the Indiana, in Hillsborough.
Yes.
And this is a place where they used to make a tawaf as if they were making
In
their
Mecca.
pilgrimage. Yes, in
Uh,
Mecca.
Dr. Blair, I believe Blair, few people, non-Muslims are there. Tawaf means circulating around, walking around the Kaaba, the Muslim holy place. It's just a rock. It's a focus of attention. That's all. And tawaf means walking around. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yes, and with Dr. Crane, we are working at proposing a new historiography because it's all about historiography.
Yes.
What appears in manuals of history or in books that we have at the university is only a selection of books that have been selected in an unfair way.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, they had objectives. They wanted to put under the light the Europeans, and they ignored all the references, all the sources, all the discoveries regarding the Arabs, the Muslims, the Black Africans. They as if they wanted to erase the history of America its history as an Arab, as a Muslim, as a Black African continent, and just put the light on a certain description of the Native Americans. And so what I have done is that I have crossed information in different fields. And so this is how I understood that it was all about selecting the right historiography. And what happened afterwards is that I have made other researches in the maritime world. So I had to start everything from the beginning. And I chose the maritime world because it's the way the people traveled when they they had no planes at that time. So
yeah, that's right.
it had to be by
Ocean,
boat, by ships.
yeah,
Yes.
maritime, yeah.
Yes. And
Samira, one question I have for you, curiosity. What made you get interested in doing research? What was it what motivated you to do research in this subject?
well, as I told you
Earlier.
I was when I was 11, 12 years old, I had some questions that my teachers didn't want to answer to, and they just focused on the Europeans. And I grew up while reading books in parallel to the books that I used to read at school. And so the books that I read at school contradicted what I was reading at home.
Wow.
And so I started to have a kind of private library. And so after reading the Quran, because when I was 11, 12 years old, I used to listen to Al-Quran, and I was really very interested in its content, even though I didn't understand a word of what I heard. I just loved listening to Al-Quran. And so when I grew up, I used to tell myself, when I grow up, I will try to make researches in order to understand what is being said, because it's beautiful, but I don't understand it. I want to know what it's all about. And so
you have that research orientation right from 11 years old.
Yes, you can say that it was really very early.
Yes.
And so when I grew up and that I read that it was for all the worlds, then I said, okay, all the worlds, and how about the natives? And given that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to put into question his book, his word, because he knows that we are not going to find anything that's illogical or that contradicts the scientific world. I said, okay, and how about the natives of America?
Yes.
So I said, okay, I'm going to try to understand what's going on, because there's something missing. There's a whole story of America that's missing.
Exactly.
And so this is how I started really to work in a thorough way in analyzing the Quranic text, the story of the prophets and messengers, because I was looking for a prophet and messenger on the American continent, because I heard that read that the natives of America heard about Noah alayhi salam, Noah's Ark.
Yes.
And I said, okay, if they know about Noah's Ark, it means that they have had a messenger. But given that Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Jesus, peace be upon him, who are the two last messengers sent to humankind, so it means that they just couldn't ignore the existence of Jesus. I mean, no one can ignore the existence of Jesus, Isa ibn Maryam, and alayhi salatu wasalam, and the way he was born. And no one could ignore the seal of the messengers. And it was unfair to say that in 1492, the so-called discovery of America underlined that there was a people and that there was a new continent that was discovered as if it were on the book of Jules Verne, the French author. And it was illogical, and it had nothing to do with rationality. It was, the Quran is rational.
It is. It is.
Yes, it's far from being what people are saying about it. I mean, it's all the time. It requires from you to learn and to search for knowledge. And this is what I did. I was a seeker of knowledge, and I'm still a seeker of knowledge. And this is because I tried to put into practice what I had been told by the Prophet ﷺ, and by the first word revealed to this world of, I mean, this visible word from the invisible word, Iqra.
Yes.
Iqra, read, learn.
Read, learn, understand.
Yes, and
think.
try to understand. Yeah. So I put it into question. That's it. I mean, there was nothing extraordinary about it. I was just curious.
Yes.
I was curious.
Friends, you're listening to Dr. Samira Benturki Saïdi. She's talking about the Native American Islam, the presence of Islam in Native America, the traditional. And in a few seconds, you're welcome to ask any question that if you have. Generally, it's a conversation we have. I'm glad we have a few guests. Few questions I have for you, Dr. Samira, was you mentioned the European had an idea that if they cross the Atlantic, they will fall off the thing. Did they? What else did they believe? Is that the reason they didn't go?
Yes, and this is something that they believe until the beginning of the 16th century. It was not only until the 15th century. In fact, the Europeans were under strict control of the church. And so the church didn't allow them, I mean, the parishioners, the Christian parishioners did not allow them to put into question the Bible.
Yes.
And so as the Bible had been written by different persons through centuries, it was no more the Gospels of Jesus, alayhi salam.
Yeah.
It was no more the Bible. I mean, with all the revelations that had been made in the past to prophets and messengers to Bani Israel, and so it had been falsified. And as it had been falsified, unfortunately, the peoples were not allowed to not only put into question the content of the Bible, but they were not even allowed to read it.
Yes.
To read it. Not everybody could read the Bible.
Correct.
Even the woman was allowed to read the Bible only on the 19th century, for example, in countries like the United Kingdom, because women were considered as being the path to the devil.
Amazing changes.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And the second question I have is, you mentioned the name of Muhammad, peace be upon him, inscribed on some rock. Are there any pictures or is there a documentation on that is available to us?
Yes, that is available. Let me take a look at my tablet and try to find for you. There's, for example, the name Muhammad in the book written by Fell.
Wow. Yeah, I can read it.
Okay.
As a kid, I used to write stretched language like Kofi script. I used to write it.
Yeah, and there is another one. I can find it here because it's a book of hundreds of pages written by Dr. Baifel and I know that it had been translated into Arabic. Well, there are many. I don't have it here available unless you give me a few seconds.
Sure.
Okay.
Meanwhile, friends, you're listening to Dr. Samira Benturki Saïdi. She is talking about the presence of Islam in America from 8th century. And she just showed you the inscription on the rock with the name Muhammad. And she's sharing a few more things about the Mayan tradition and the practice of Islam in Guatemala and how people used to dress. And it's a good education here. We got about 20 minutes, and I'll ask you if anybody has this question. Wow, wow, wow.
So
I
this
see.
is Muhammad Nabiullah.
Yes, I see it.
And
Yes.
so at first they thought that it was a Native American writing according to their
Yes.
construction of their culture, of their
I,
tradition.
yeah, I
And
see that
afterwards,
Muhammad with the heart
Nabiullah,
and heart and heart.
Allah.
Yeah, meme. Yeah, yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Yes, and this was discovered by Dr. Breifeld from the University of Harvard.
Yes.
Yes, and he highlights also the fact that there were coins discovered on the eastern side of the United States
Mm-hmm.
that were also discovered, in fact, by workers who were in fact preparing for the how can I say it? They were preparing the building of constructions,
Yes.
and they discovered these coins in a coffer, and it was written La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet.
Yeah.
And
And this is from 7th, the dated to 8th or 9th century?
This was from the 19th century.
19th century.
19th century.
Yeah.
And so it was like that for for years, because, for example, at the off the coast of Venezuela and Honduras,
Mm-hmm.
they also discovered coins in Arabic, and they were dating back to the 8th century AD. So 2 centuries after after Islam, after the advent of Islam.
Yeah.
And this was highlighted by Dr. Cyrus Gordon from different universities of the United States, and one of them from New York City.
Yes.
And there were also other artifacts found by Dr. Alexander von Wutnow in Mesoamerica, and Hyatt Verrill also from the United States.
That's good.
Highlighted the fact that what was being taught about the history of the America was totally false, and that they were denying.
Well, you can't deny the facts, like finding the coins and dating them, inscription on the rocks. You cannot deny those. They are the facts.
Well, in fact, they try to deny it because they, for example, for certain ships where they found coins in Arabic, the researchers were not allowed to make more research because they didn't want. Well, the governments didn't want to insult the name of Christopher Columbus.
Wow.
So, in order not to insult the Christopher Columbus,
they were suppressing history. Yeah.
They deny everything.
Blair, looks like Blair may have a question. Blair, if you have a question, unmute and please ask.
Thank you very much. This has been very informative and thought-provoking. I'm very interested in the religious diversity of West Africans who were enslaved and brought to North America, in particular, prior to the 1800s. And I've heard it said, without sourcing, actually, that 25 to 30% of these enslaved West Africans were Muslims. And I just wonder if our speaker agrees with that statement, and if not, why not? And if so, how would you direct me to a place where I could learn more about it?
I do not agree with that, because in fact Islam was part of West Africa for hundreds of years, and the Black Africans were among those who worked in order to let the word of Allah be known to the world. And there was a link between the Cherokees and the peoples of West Africa. And moreover, I have made about 10 years ago an interview with a Spanish scholar who told me that, who had written about the fact that the Black Africans, before being enslaved by the Portuguese and the Spanish and by the Europeans, had traveled across the Atlantic in the name of Allah.
Mm.
And moreover, there is also this Spanish researcher and writer who is named La Duquesa Roja, the Red Duchess, and who discovered in the library, in her private library, certain documents proving that there were many transatlantic voyages from North Africa, from West Africa, and from Spain towards the American continent. And she wrote a book about it entitled Africa versus America.
Samira, she also asked the question if there was religious diversity in West Africa.
There was, of course, a diversity in religions, but Islam was the most important, given that, for example, in regions like Timbuktu, and Timbuktu, knowing that the empire of Mali was a Muslim empire, and that there were universities teaching about Islam, and that there were journeys made across the Atlantic in the name of Allah by the Black Africans, and that students from various countries of Africa and also from Europe, from Southern Europe, used to go to Black Africa in order to have access to this religious knowledge. And this religious knowledge, which was very important in these parts of Africa, and that had been also highlighted by Ahmed Didat, who focused on this also on this subject. And this African religion, well, with this, Islam as an African religion, mostly in the West and North Africa, had also been adopted by various tribes of America who had come from Africa and were named also Al-Murabiton or Imamat in America, which proved that there was more than 25% or 30% of slaves that were Muslims, that because it was a center of Islam. I mean, Black Africa, like regions in Timbuktu, all the all the empire of Mali, was a Muslim flag. I mean, they were putting forward a Muslim flag, and they traveled in the name of Allah, and they were not allowed even to practice their Islam once they had been enslaved by the Europeans. And when I wrote a dictionary of Muslim names, I focused on different regions of the world, including America. And I discovered that there were many Muslim names in different parts of America, including the United States, including the eastern parts of the United States, mm-hmm. with Arabs and Muslim names. Mm. And I have been able to gather hundreds of names, which prove that the Black Africans in America, Afro-American Blacks, were in fact greatly Muslims.
Thank you.
I hope that this answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much. And I really appreciate this. And I think that this is an important part of African-American history. It's an important part of American history that is not widely known and certainly not widely appreciated. So
Claire, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I can tell you about my background on this particular question. I'm a docent at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And certainly there's much within the vast collection of the museum about religious history of African Americans, both starting from the 1400s in Africa and some of the European attitudes towards the importance of conversion to Christianity and so forth.
Sure.
And one of the artifacts that interests me the most, and I want to learn more about it, is there's a huge Bible, Christian Bible, on display in the museum that slaveholders gave. they had enslaved a man who was Muslim, and they wanted to convert him to Christianity because that was a big, thing.
Yeah.
And they gave him this Bible, which is written in Arabic. And he went through the Bible and wrote verses from the Quran in the Bible, so that he made this his. He refused this attempt to convert him, but wrote in the Bible verses that connected him to his own religion.
Yes.
And I think that's such an important story that I'm wanting to learn more about. And so the origin of my question today was really to help me get more context in which to understand that, and the way in which enslaved Africans persisted in their religious beliefs as they came to America and then the United States, and a lot of pressure was applied to them to give up their religion and convert to Christianity.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Blair, can you share your email so we can I can reach out to you, because we are going to do a program on Native Americans again. So I would like to hear from you, Native Americans and Native Africans.
Thank you. I'll share that in the chat.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And the next question I have is from anybody can go first.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Salim. And we are going to stay, friends, we're going to stay a few more minutes with the permission of Samira. We are going to do for 1 hour, but we will extend it. Is that okay with Samira? Samira, with you to answer a few questions?
Of course.
Okay,
Of course.
thank you.
What I would like to add is that as for the Black Africans, before going to the next question, the Black Africans in 1321 traveled across the Atlantic on board of hundreds of fleets, and they were, of course, Muslims at that time. And as Black Africa was a center of Islam and for Muslim scholars, they had, when they traveled, to bring with them this Muslim religion to the Americas. And when anthropologists and when a certain number of researchers, and among them a French officer, studied the different names of tribes in America, he discovered that many of them had Black Africans names, and it was related to Imamat, for example, Imamat, the tribe of Imamat in Southern America, and Al-Murabitun in Southern America. And this helped him understand that Islam, that previous tribe, that previous voyages by Muslim Black Africans had been made to the Americas before 1492. And there are also other information in the anthropological field that I have highlighted in my next book entitled Arab, Muslim, and Black African America before 1492. And these information are from scholars from different countries, from different origins, and who have worked at trying to unearth this Black African Islamic presence, and this Arab and Muslim presence, and also the Arab presence on the American continent before the advent of Islam. And yes, please, your question, please.
Salim, your question.
Yes, Dr. Samira, you mentioned the reluctance that some scholars in the West have regarding pushing into the presence of Muslims in America. And this is reminding me of a scholar in the 14th century from Syria, from Damascus. His name is Ibn Shatir, who actually wrote a book about, astronomy, which preceded the Copernicus ideas. And when actually scholars held a conference in 1957 Many other Europeans, didn't accept that. Some of them even, walked off the conference because they didn't want, to accept challenge to what they already have. My question is, how could you, overcome this, I would call it scientific bias, so that we address these discoveries, just for scientific, purposes, not for any other things. I mean, your contribution seems to, pave the way for that, direction. But what else can be done? That's my question. Thank you.
It's a good question, Doctor. Samira, you have to unmute. You have to unmute, Samira. Dr. Samira?
Excuse me, just a second.
Sure.
Thank you.
Friends, you're listening to Dr. Samira Benturki Saïdi. She is giving you history of Islam in the Native American traditions. And she will be right back. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, we have extended the time for another 10 minutes. If you got any questions, please raise your hand. This program, Muslims Together, comes every Sunday between 12 to 1. And then we have another program called Islamic Values, the values that contribute towards the greatness of the world, the well-being of humanity. There are about 15 values, and we are running a program for 20 weeks straight, every Sunday, 2 to 3. It's about how Islam can contribute to the well-being of the world. And these values will be amazing for you to learn. Today it is 2 to 3. And if you send me an email at mikegauss@gmail, which is in the chat, I'll send you the link for 2 o'clock program. Sorry, doctor, go ahead.
Yes, excuse me, I really had something urgent with my young sister. I wanted to answer Dr. Salim about his question. In fact, about 5 years ago, I have met with Dr. Fuat Saskin, who is a Turkish scholar who wrote interesting books regarding the history of science and technology in Islam. And he told me that for 65 years, he had he had made researches proving that the history of science and technology had been falsified, and that the Europeans had taken hold of all the Arab and Muslim inventions, and that when it's about cartography, they pretend that they are French, German, Italian, or Spanish. And in fact, all of these so-called cartographers like Mercator and Ortelius and Castaldi had in fact taken hold of the Arab maps, and that their knowledge was that of the geographers of Al-Ma'mun, and that there were so many inventions that had been taken and that are considered as being Europeans, which is completely untrue. And this reminded me also of what had been made in Spain, in Al-Andalus, where the Christians used to translate the books written by Arab and Muslim scientists, and then erase the name of the real scientists and of the real writers, and then put names of Christian so-called scientists. And this is the reason why, in fact, all these scientists of that time were from the church. In fact, they were not scientists. It's because those who used to translate the books were from the church.
Wow, that's a interesting revelation, that they put their name instead of the real author's name, and they will be sued today if they did that.
Yes, of course, and there was even a qadi, a judge from Sevilla, who wrote that it was forbidden to sell books to the Jews or the Christians, because they take hold of the writings of the Arabs and the Muslims and pretend that it is theirs. So these
Wow.
are ancient texts. So I mean, it's we can prove it.
Yeah.
And moreover, when the Muslims came to the Iberian Peninsula, they endangered the church at the financial level, because when people got sick, they used to go to the priest and pay him in order to make a prayer,
Yes.
and to get healed, to be healed. And when Islam came, they with its science and rationality, the people were told to go to see the doctor, and so there were less and less money on the church's coffers.
Correct. Correct.
And so this is the reason why they burned the books of the Arabs and the Muslims when after the Reconquista.
Wow. Wow.
So these information are important to cross in order to understand what happened on the American continent. For example, some scholars from Mexico knew that there were crossings from Africa and from Al-Andalus long before Christopher Columbus.
Yes.
But as one of them had his ancestors fighting the Arabs and the Muslims in Spain, and that he found himself in Mexico,
Yes.
he didn't allow the students to put into question the official version of history. And this is the reason why they denied this Arab and Muslim presence in America.
Wow.
In fact, they were continuing the Inquisition on the American continent. And this is the reason also why when they discovered books written in Arabic, and when they discovered this Arab and Muslim presence in America, the church who had sent some of the researchers told them to stop, because
Yes.
they knew what they were going to find. And they
And
knew, for example, in Ecuador, where they found tablets written in many, you know, that the Arabs had many writings
yes.
and many alphabets. And so they found hundreds of thousands of tablets written in Sumerian, in Phoenician, thus in Arabic, in this part of America. And one of those who took hold of it was a churchman, and he used to be very nice to the Native Americans. And in order to, well, he healed them, and they gave them medicine, and he was such a nice person. And so in order to show that they were grateful to him, they used to bring him tablets.
Wow.
And to give him artifacts, which were so precious.
It is.
He didn't tell them that they were giving him artifacts, that they were paying him in a way that was a lot more valuable than what he offered them.
Wow. Yeah. Akhtar Sadiq has a question. Akhtar, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Boss, for this amazing program. And I'd like to compliment Dr. Samira for her, such a deep knowledge in Islam and the history of Islam. My question is, this is really an eye-opener for me to learn about Islam, even back in those, before even Europeans settled here. The question is that, have you ever been able to share this information on the bigger platform, like say ISNA convention or ICNA convention or something like that? I think it will be very beneficial and really an eye-opener to Muslims and non-Muslims to know what you today, talked about it. At least today, for the first time, maybe it's my ignorance, that I never heard something like this.
By the way, Akhtar, I have invited Dr. Said, for president of ISNA, and he is aware of this, and he is the one that connected me to a few Algerian American Muslims. So they will be watching the YouTube later on. So Dr. Samira, your turn to answer the question.
Thank you very much for your very important question, and even fundamental during my researches. To tell you the truth, I have started getting in touch with Arab and Muslim governments for almost 11 to 12 years. I got in touch with televisions also in different countries. I went even to the cinematographic market 1 week before the Cannes Festival in southern France. And I got in touch with all the televisions that were Muslims over there, and even some of them from Malaysia, from Iran, from Qatar, and other also countries. And I highlighted this Arab and Muslim presence, but I was really naive. At that time, I was very naive, and well, no one wanted, in fact, me to talk about it. And I would even add that some persons who were financing these Arab and Muslim televisions, and whom I got in touch with maybe 1 or 2 years later, were aware of this Arab and Muslim presence on the American continent, and they didn't want me to speak about it. This person that I will not name told me that for political, economical, and financial reasons, anyone who would allow me to speak about it would have to pay it.
Yeah. That's
I mean,
right.
it was amazing. It was amazing. And when this person tried to convince me to forget about it and try to find a way to make me give up, I felt this tuma'nina. You know, I felt so well, because at that moment I realized that, in fact, not only some people knew, but also people from the Arab and Muslim world and from the Arab and Muslim governments who were aware of the value of this information, and thought that by trying to threaten me at a certain level, they were. I mean, this person was threatening me.
But
I'm just giving certain points. I'm highlighting certain points, but this person from an Arab country didn't want anything to be known about this information that is related to the history of America, of Arab, Muslim, and Black African America before Columbus. And so this is the reason why I have not been allowed to speak in these televisions, on these sites.
From your understanding, I'm sorry, but from your understanding, what's their reasoning for not allowing you to, you know, what are they going to lose, or you know, credibility, or I mean, what is your thinking of why they're not allowing you?
You know, he gave me certain explanations that made me understand that, in fact, these countries, these governments were well, didn't want to have any problems with the government of the United States of America. And so they didn't want them to, they didn't want this government to be angry at them, and because they were speaking about this Arab and Muslim presence on the American continent. And I didn't understand, because for me I was speaking about history. It had nothing to do with politics.
Politics, yes.
Exactly.
It's history, it's archaeology, it's anthropology, it's the maritime history of the world. I mean, I was not connected at the same level as they were, and they were connected at the political level. And for them, they would have to lose money, and they would have to lose their support from the American government. And what was so funny is that the man who happened to support my work was from the American government. He was a U.S. ambassador, and he was the foreign advisor to President Nixon and from the American administration. And that was so funny because it was, as I refused to give up, and as I refused to forget about this Arab and Muslim presence, about the fact that the peoples of America started their prayers while saying the Ya Allah. It was so important. It was so precious, so valuable. I did not want, under any threat or against money, to give up and or to stop talking about it. So I continued, and slowly and surely, some people got interested in my work. For example, the television of the Sultanate of Oman, the radio and television of Sultanate of Oman, which offered me to speak about it. So I have made my first interview with them. And I was also supposed to make an interview with their television and not only the radio. And I had to travel. I couldn't, but they wanted really to allow me to speak about it. And then French televisions gave me this possibility. And among them from, well, French and Arab televisions, of course. And afterwards, a French television, but a part of it has
That's
been
good. That's good.
cut.
Yeah, very good.
Friends, you're listening to Dr. Samira Benturki Saïdi. She is speaking about the presence of Islam in America from 7th or 8th century. And she had documentation that she shared earlier. If you got a few more questions, we'll take the questions. And on my part, Akhtar, I would urge you to call ISNA. I have already called them, ISNA and ICNA, to invite Dr. Samira to come and share that. And we will do another program when the COVID is over. We will do a live program with African Americans, as well as Native African American Muslims, as well as African Americans and Native Americans. I have a huge network of Native Americans. We will do a seminar. Most likely it will be in Dallas because most of my Native Americans are connected through Dallas. So we will do a program in Dallas, Texas.
I'm pretty sure in America the story will be much different than in Sultanate or Arab countries and all that. I think you're aware of it. People are still more open-minded and more receptive. I would say to this kind of information. So I'm sure if you pursue, I think it will be a great benefit to the community at large, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If nobody has a question, we extended beyond our time by 14 minutes. We might be able to answer one or two more questions if anybody has. If not, we will. I'll give you a few seconds to ask. Samira, somebody had written something in French. I of course, I don't understand. See if in the chat if you can understand what that is in French.
Was it French or Spanish? I think.
Okay, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, something. I think.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
She's French. She was just saying that she couldn't understand her conference. That's all what she said. She said
okay.
It's very frustrating not to answer to understand her because she was speaking in English.
Oh, okay. Well, friends, thank you very much for being a part of it. Dr. Samira Saïdi, Dr. Samira Benturki Saïdi, I really appreciate you. And inshallah, we will talk to ISNA, ICNA. And also there is another Muslim television network in the US. We will share them with this video and hopefully we will have you. And we will also do a program from the Center for Pluralism on the presence of Muslims in Americas from 7th or 8th century. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks everybody who had joined. Basically, it's a conversation between me and the author and the presenter. I appreciate those who joined. And if anybody wants to leave anything in the chat, they're welcome to. But we will conclude the program in about 2 minutes. Samira, you want to say a few last statement, and after that we close.
Well, I would like to say that it's very important for the legacy of humankind to have access to its historical heritage, without thinking about what could anyone believe, because for political reasons they don't want the truth to emerge. It is our right to have access to our history, to our heritage as a part of humanity. And we cannot accept that in 2021 we are still under such intellectual pressure, as if we were living about 500 or 600 years ago, when people got killed or because they were speaking the truth at a scientific level. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much. And friends, this will be at the YouTube, and just type Center for Pluralism on YouTube and you'll get this video. I mean, it will take me about a few hours to post it. Thank you very much. God bless America. God bless Muslims. God bless the entire world. Thank you.
Allahumma ameen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.